The ink on the divorce decree was barely dry. Yet the only thing colder than the signature stamp was the look in my eyes as I walked out of the Seattle courthouse. The gray drizzle of the Pacific Northwest clung to my coat, mirroring the 18 years of damp, suffocating indifference I had endured. But today, the fog in my mind had lifted. While my ex-husband, Marcus Vance, was likely popping a bottle of champagne with his mistress, Tiffany, celebrating his freedom and his impending engagement, I was pulling out my smartphone. I wasn't just checking the time. I was initiating a financial apocalypse. With a calm precision that frightened even me, I opened the banking app. There they were, lined up like soldiers I had foolishly funded. 15 authorized user credit cards. One for Marcus, one for his sister Brenda, one for his mother, and a dozen others scattered among his parasitic entourage. For years, I had been the silent financier of their lavish lifestyles, the doormat they wiped their muddy boots on. Not anymore. I tapped on the primary card. The Platinum Elite he loved to flash at business dinners. Status: active. I hit the Remove Authorized User button. Confirm? Yes. I didn't stop there. I went down the list, one by one. Brenda's shopping card. Cancelled. His mother's medical expenses card that was mostly used for bingo and spas. Cancelled. As I stood on the wet pavement, my phone began to vibrate with a frenzy of notifications. A digital symphony of rejection. At that exact moment, across town at the Grandview Hotel, Marcus was standing at the reception desk, his arm draped around Tiffany, trying to put a deposit down for a $100,000 engagement party. He handed the clerk the Platinum Elite card with a smug grin. Declined. He frowned, blamed the chip, and handed over another. Declined. Then another. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. It was the sound of a carefully constructed facade crumbling into dust. Friends, life often forces us to crossroads we never asked to visit. Divorce is perhaps the most brutal of these intersections. After nearly 2 decades of sacrificing my identity for the Vance family, all I had left was a legal document and a heart that felt like it had been put through a shredder. But this story isn't about the tears I shed in the dark or the desperate pleas for affection I once whispered to a man who couldn't hear them. No. This story begins the moment Marcus sped away from the courthouse in his luxury sedan, leaving me in the rain. In that instant, the iceberg of my tolerance, which had withstood immense pressure for years, finally cracked. But instead of sinking, I chose to freeze everything around me. I transformed my grief into a cold, calculated strategy. From severing the financial lifelines to confronting the people who treated my kindness as weakness, every step I took from that curb was a declaration of war. But it wasn't a war for property. It was a war for my soul. This is the journey of how Elena Vance died, and how a new woman rose from her ashes to teach a lesson that money can never buy. I clutched the manila envelope containing the divorce papers against my chest. It had only been 10 minutes since I left the clerk's window, and the paper still felt warm. Or perhaps that was just my imagination trying to find heat in a cold world. The wind off the Puget Sound cut through my trench coat, reminding me that I had rushed out this morning without a scarf. My body was shivering, but inside, a fire was roaring. It was the sensation of a burden, heavy as a boulder, finally being rolled off my shoulders. Marcus had walked out ahead of me. The moment the judge banged the gavel, he had turned on his heel, not sparing me a single glance, and practically jogged to his car. Through the tinted window of his black SUV, I saw her. Tiffany. She was wearing a neon pink jacket that looked ridiculous against the somber courthouse backdrop. She was applying lip gloss in the passenger seat. I didn't feel jealousy. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound, intoxicating sense of liberation. 18 years of marriage. From the first day, full of naive hope and promises of building an empire together, to the total disintegration of respect. It was ending today. I took out my phone again to double-check my handiwork. A few years ago, Marcus had convinced me that, for tax purposes, and building credit. I should open the primary accounts in my name since my credit score was perfect, inherited from my diligent father. He asked for authorized cards for himself and his family. Blinded by love and a desire to be the perfect supportive wife, I issued 15 cards. I was a fool. I had handed them loaded guns, and they had spent years shooting holes in my financial security. I stared at the screen. The card, ending in 4,490, was Marcus's favorite. He claimed those numbers were lucky. I knew for a fact that last week, he had used that card to buy Tiffany a designer handbag worth $4,000. I knew, because I paid the bill. I bit my lip until I tasted copper. The app confirmed the cancellation. One by one, the dominoes fell. Ding, ding, ding. The sound was sweeter than any concerto I had ever heard. As the final card was wiped from existence, a message popped up from my best friend, Sarah. Her voice note played through my earbuds, breathless with excitement. Elena? You are not going to believe this. My cousin works at the Grandview, remember? She just texted me. She said your ex is in the lobby with some young girl. He is trying to book the Royal Ballroom for an engagement bash next month. He told the manager money is no object, and that he wants a $100,000 event. He is trying to pay the deposit right now. And he is sweating bullets. I couldn't help but smile. A genuine, sharp smile that felt foreign on my face. How timely. While he was dreaming of a future built on my credit, I was cutting the power cord. I typed a quick reply. I know, Sarah. I just pulled the plug. He won't be able to buy a pack of gum, let alone a ballroom. Watch him panic. I pocketed the phone and began the walk to the bus stop. I didn't even have a car. Marcus had taken the sedan, claiming he needed it for client meetings. I had walked everywhere or taken transit for years to save money for our future. On the way home, the smell of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor stopped me. I bought a bag, the warmth of the nuts seeping into my frozen palms. From now on, I told myself, I am going to live for Elena. I hadn't been home for 30 minutes when the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault on the wood. I knew that rhythm. It was Brenda, my ex-sister-in-law. Elena Vance, open this door right now. Do you think you can hide in there? The shrillness of her voice penetrated the walls. I was sitting on the sofa, my old tabby cat, Jasper, curled on my lap. I was about to peel a chestnut, but I paused, frowning. Clearly, Marcus had called the cavalry when his plastic stopped working. I placed Jasper gently on the cushions, washed my hands, and walked to the door. I didn't open it. Who is it? I asked calmly. If you have something to say it from out there. Stop trying to break my door down. Who do you think it is? Brenda screamed. Open up! My brother is being humiliated at the Grandview because of you. If you don't fix this right now, you are going to regret it, I sighed, unlocked the deadbolt, and swung the door open. Brenda stood there, a vision of chaotic fury. She was wearing a floral dress that was too tight and too bright for the weather. Her hair teased into a lion's mane that defied gravity. In her hand, she clutched a shiny patent leather purse that I recognized instantly. I had paid for it 3 months ago. Before I could say a word, she pushed past me, storming into my living room. She tossed the handbag onto the sofa, the heavy metal chain clanking against the coffee table, sending poor Jasper scurrying under the recliner. Brenda stood with her hands on her hips, her chest heaving. Have you lost your mind? Marcus just called me. He said when he went to pay the deposit, none of the cards worked. He called the bank, and they told him the primary account holder canceled all authorized users. Who else could it be but you? I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, leaving the door slightly ajar. Yes, it was me. So what? So what? Brenda yelled, her eyes bulging. My brother has used those cards for years. And so have I. Just yesterday I saw a pair of boots I was going to buy. Do you think you can just cut us off like that? Who do you think you are? I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I walked over to the small desk in the corner and pulled a file folder from the drawer. Inside were the original agreements I had signed years ago. I tossed the papers onto the coffee table and pointed at the highlighted text. Read it, Brenda. Primary cardholder, Elena Vance. The right to authorize users depends exclusively on the primary holder. In other words, if I want to cancel them, I cancel them. Who I give charity to is my business. It has nothing to do with you anymore. Brenda snatched up the papers, flipping through them aggressively. Her face twisted in confusion, but her mouth kept moving. These are old papers. Marcus told me he changed the ownership to his name ages ago. This is fake. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and shoved the screen in her face. Look closely. Elena Vance. Owner. When did he say he changed it? Ask him to show you a bank statement that proves it. If he can do that, I will not only reactivate the cards, I will apologize to you on my knees. If not, get out of my house. Brenda was speechless. Her face went from flushed to a pale, sickly white. She softened her tone, attempting a manipulation tactic I had seen 1,000 times. Fine. Let's assume the cards are yours. But Marcus lived with you for 18 years. How can you be so cruel? He is starting a new life. He can't even pay the deposit for his engagement party. Aren't you thinking about the embarrassment he is facing right now? The rage I had suppressed surged like bile. Did he think about embarrassment when he took his mistress to book a luxury wedding while still married to me? Did he think about cruelty when he siphoned our savings to buy her jewelry while I was wearing a coat from a thrift store? I lived by his side for nearly 2 decades, pinching every penny, while he lived like a king on my credit. Now that the well has run dry, he remembers me? It is too late, Brenda. Brenda stepped back, her eyes narrowing. She reached for a decorative glass vase on the table, her knuckles white. I stepped forward, pointing a finger directly in her face. Don't you dare. I will call the police right now. Let them come and decide who is at fault. The woman canceling her own credit cards, or the trespasser destroying property. I am sure the neighbors would love to see you being escorted out in handcuffs. Brenda's hand hovered in the air. She looked at me, then at the door, realizing she had lost. She stomped her foot like a petulant child, grabbed her handbag, and hissed, "You will pay for this. I am telling Mom. When she finds out, she won't leave you alone." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard, the pictures on the wall went crooked. I locked the door and leaned against it, closing my eyes. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I felt stronger. If Brenda had left, Martha would be next. The matriarch of the Vance family was a different kind of monster. But I wasn't afraid. I walked over to the sofa, coaxing Jasper out from his hiding spot. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered. "We are going to be fine." Not 40 minutes later, the knock came. It wasn't the violent banging Brenda had employed. It was a rhythmic, authoritative tap. Tap, tap, tap. It was designed to induce guilt. I knew it was Martha. I placed Jasper in the bedroom and shut the door to keep him safe. I opened the front door to find Martha standing there. She was wearing the dark green wool coat I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. A gray scarf wrapped dramatically around her head. In her hand was a heavy canvas tote bag. She pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, tracking mud onto the floor I had just mopped. She didn't look at me. She walked to the center of the living room and dropped the canvas bag on the coffee table with a thud. Several bruised apples rolled out onto the floor. She collapsed onto the sofa, sighing, as if she carried the weight of the heavens. "Elena, sit down. I want to speak to you from the heart." I dragged a wooden chair from the dining table and sat opposite her, keeping a safe distance. I waited. "Brenda called me crying," Martha began, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "She says you canceled all the family cards. Marcus is stuck at the hotel, begging people for money. Tell me, dear, how could you be so heartless?" I remained silent. My face, A mask of stone, she continued, emboldened by my silence. I know Marcus made a mistake. Getting involved with that girl is his fault. I admit it. But men, when they are stressed, they make foolish mistakes. Besides, you lived together for so long. Some affection must remain. Surely? How could you cut off his funds like that? He has an image to maintain. He is a businessman. I couldn't help but frown. Martha, he didn't make a mistake. He committed systematic adultery, and those cards are in my name. I cancel them when I see fit. It has nothing to do with his image. If he wanted to keep up appearances, he shouldn't have used my credit to buy handbags for his mistress or book luxury ballrooms. What manners you have! Martha slammed her hand on the table, making the vase jump. Adultery, you say? That girl is young and can give him children. You haven't given him a son in 18 years. If Marcus has a strong, healthy son with her, it is a blessing for our family. Is it so hard for you to be understanding? That was the spark that ignited the powder keg. I stood up, walked to the study, and retrieved the doomsday file. It was a collection of receipts, bank statements, and business ledgers I had secretly copied over the last 6 months. I threw the stack of papers in front of her. You want understanding? Look at this. Last winter, I had pneumonia. My fever was 103 degrees. I called Marcus and asked him to pick up my prescription because I couldn't drive. He told me he was in a crucial meeting. Look at the date on this receipt, Martha. That same night, at that same hour, he was at a steakhouse racking up a $300 bill with Tiffany. Is this something I should understand? Martha picked up the receipt and tossed it aside. He has to eat, Elena. $300 isn't that much. Really? I picked up another paper. How about this? For my 40th birthday, I bought myself a sweater for $80. Marcus made me return it, saying we were tight on cash. But here is a credit card statement from that same week. He bought a diamond necklace for Tiffany. Price tag, $1,200. Why wasn't that tight on cash? And this? I pointed to the business ledger. My parents gave us $30,000 to start his logistics company. I worked that front desk for 10 years, unpaid. And what did Marcus do? He siphoned over $150,000 from the business accounts into his personal slush fund. Half of that money is legally mine. By what right did he do that? Martha's face began to pale. She reached for one of the apples on the floor, her hand shaking, then dropped it. She cleared her throat, trying to regain her authority. That money was earned by Marcus. He is the face of the company. You are the wife. Your job is to support him. Come on, reactivate the cards. If Marcus has a breakdown, can you live with that guilt? Guilt? I laughed, a harsh sound. Martha, don't you give your entire pension to Marcus and Brenda? Brenda doesn't work. She lives off you. You wear the same coat for years, while Marcus uses my money to support his mistress. Why is that not disrespectful to you? Are you asking me to reactivate the cards so he can keep buying affection from a girl half his age? Martha was cornered. Suddenly, she slid off the sofa onto the floor, slapping her thighs and wailing. Oh, how miserable I am. I raised a monster. My daughter-in-law abuses me. Neighbors, help! She is mistreating an old woman. The louder she screamed, the calmer I became. I walked to the front door and threw it wide open. Martha, if you want an audience, let's give them one. I will invite the neighbors in. Let them see the receipts. Let them see the bank transfers to the mistress. Let's see who they think is the monster. Martha's wailing cut off instantly. She looked at the open door, then at the street. In this neighborhood, gossip traveled faster than light. If the neighbors saw the proof of her son's theft and adultery, the shame would be hers, not mine. She scrambled to her feet, dusting off her coat. She shot me a look of pure venom. You have gone too far, Elena. You will see. Marcus won't forgive this. She grabbed her empty canvas bag and marched out, purposely bumping my shoulder hard as she passed. I watched her retreat down the walkway, slamming the door behind her. I looked at the bruised apples on the floor and sighed. My heart was trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally standing up for myself. I picked up the apples, washed them, and placed them in a bowl. I was going to make applesauce. I wasn't going to let anything go to waste. Not anymore. That afternoon, I called Sarah. "We need to meet with your cousin's lawyer friend," I said. "I'm already on it," Sarah replied. "Mr. Henderson. He's a shark. Meet me at his office at 10. And bring the receipts." As I was preparing a simple dinner of scrambled eggs and toast, my phone lit up on the counter. It was Marcus. I hesitated, then pressed the record button on the screen before answering. "Elena, have you lost your mind?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. "I was at the Grandview. Do you know how stupid I looked? The card was declined in front of the manager. In front of Tiffany." I took a bite of toast, chewing slowly. Yes. I imagine that was embarrassing. Embarrassing? It was a disaster. "Why did you cancel the cards?" "Because they are my cards." "Don't give me that. I've used them for years. Reactivate them right now. I have vendors to pay. I have the deposit to secure." "No." "What do you mean?" "No. Listen to me, you vindictive witch. If you don't turn those cards back on, I will make your life a living hell. I know you have those little receipts you think are so special. They are worthless. The divorce is done. Assets are split. You won't see a dime." I spoke calmly into the microphone. "Whether the assets are split correctly is up to the courts, Marcus. I have proof of the $150,000 you diverted. I have proof of the gambling debts." There was a silence. Then a crash, as if he had thrown something. "Who told you about the gambling?" I hung up. I saved the file as Marcus Threat 1 and uploaded it to the cloud. I felt lighter. The fear that had once paralyzed me was gone, replaced by clarity. Suddenly, a notification chimed. A WhatsApp message from an unknown number. The profile picture was a selfie of a young woman sticking her tongue out, wearing a diamond engagement ring. "Tiffany. Request to chat." I accepted. The messages came in a rapid-fire burst. Photos first. The ballroom at the Grandview. A selfie of her in a massive white gown. A picture of her and Marcus holding expensive menus. "Tiffany. Look at what you're missing. Marcus is spending $100K on our party. My dress is custom. $20K. He says I look like a queen. You probably never stepped foot in a place like this, you bitter old hag." I smiled. The naivety was almost tragic. I typed back slowly. "Elena. It is a beautiful dress, Tiffany. But a word of advice. Make sure the check clears. He called me begging for money yesterday because he couldn't pay the deposit. He swiped 7 cards, and they all failed. Are you sure he has the money?" "Tiffany. You're a liar. Marcus is rich. You're just jealous. He told me he canceled the cards because you were stealing from him." "Elena. Stealing? Honey, look at this." I sent her a screenshot of the bank transfer history. May 15th. $3,000 to Tiffany Jones. Memo. Fun money. Source. Joint savings. Elena. That was my money. And the dress? Paid for with my credit card. Which is now canceled. Good luck with the rich businessman. She blocked me immediately. I took screenshots of the entire exchange and sent them to Sarah. "Evidence," I typed. The next morning, Mr. Henderson's office smelled of mahogany and old paper. He was a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who listened without interrupting as I laid out the doomsday file. He adjusted his glasses as he examined the ledger. "Mrs. Vance, this is extensive. You have proof here of dissipation of marital assets. The $150,000 he moved? That's fraud. We can trace that. And these transfers to the casino?" "Casino?" I asked, confused. I knew about the transfers to his personal account, but I hadn't connected them to a casino. Mr. Henderson pointed to a series of withdrawals. Lucky 7 Seconds Casino. Riverboat Hold'em. He withdrew over $60,000 in cash at these locations. He isn't just cheating on you. He has a severe gambling problem. This explains the liquidity issues. My stomach churned. He had gambled away our retirement. But Mr. Henderson was smiling. This is good for us, Elena. We can prove financial misconduct. We will file a motion immediately. We will freeze his assets. We will subpoena his personal accounts. He won't be able to hide a penny. Leaving the office, Sarah hugged me. Sarah had arranged an interview for me at Greenleaf Organics, a high-end grocery store owned by her friend, Clara. It wasn't the corporate world, but it was honest work. I met Clara that afternoon. She was kind, seeing past my nervous demeanor to the capable woman underneath. You managed a logistics office for 10 years, Clara said. Managing inventory for apples and kale will be a walk in the park. You start Monday. For the first time in years, I had a purpose that wasn't serving Marcus. I spent the weekend organizing the store, learning the systems. I felt capable. I felt alive. On Sunday, Marcus called again. His tone was different. Soft. Wheedling. Elena. Can we talk? Just coffee. I want to settle this amicably. I knew it was a trap. I called Mr. Henderson. He wants to lowball you, the lawyer said. I'll come with you. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Marcus looked tired. When he saw Mr. Henderson, his fake smile faltered. I just wanted to talk to my wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. And Mr. Henderson represents my interests. Talk? Marcus sighed. Look, I know about the money. It was just a temporary loan from the business. I intended to put it back. But the business is struggling. If we go to court, the legal fees will bankrupt us both. How about this? You sign over the house to me, and I give you $50,000 cash. A clean break. The house was worth $1 million. He was trying to rob me blind. Mr. Henderson placed a single sheet of paper on the table. The casino withdrawals. Mr. Vance. We know about the $60,000 you lost at the tables. We know about the $40,000 you spent on Miss Tiffany. This isn't a loan. It's theft. We are demanding full restitution of the $150,000, plus half the value of the house, and half the business. If you refuse, we go to trial. And in a trial, your gambling addiction will become public record. Your investors will love that. Marcus turned the color of ash. He stood up, knocking his chair over. You are trying to ruin me! You ruined yourself, Marcus, I said, sipping my tea. We are just balancing the ledger. He stormed out. I felt a surge of triumph. But the war wasn't over. The wedding was in 3 days. Sarah met me later with a gleam in her eye. My contact at the hotel gave me the details. He hasn't paid the rest of the deposit. He promised them he'd bring a cashier's check on the day of the wedding. The manager is furious but letting it proceed because it's too late to cancel the catering. But, get this, he's planning to use the gift money from the guests to pay the hotel bill at the end of the night. He is broke, Elena. And the guest list? I asked. Everyone. His biggest clients. His investors. His entire family. I looked at Sarah. I have an idea. The day of the engagement party, which they were calling a wedding to save face, arrived with gray skies. I dressed in a sharp navy suit. I wasn't going as a guest. I was going as an executioner. Sarah and Mr. Henderson accompanied me. We entered through the service entrance. Courtesy of Sarah's cousin, we waited in the wings of the royal ballroom. The room was packed. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. I saw Marcus at the altar, sweating in his tuxedo. Tiffany was walking down the aisle, looking radiant and oblivious. The master of ceremonies, a man with a booming voice, began the proceedings. Friends, family, We are here to celebrate love. He went through the motions. Then came the vows. Marcus, do you promise to love and cherish? I stepped out from behind the curtain. He can't promise anything, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent room. Because he can't even pay for the chair he is standing next to. The room gasped. Marcus spun around, his eyes wide with horror. Elena! Security! I held up the hotel contract. This event costs $100,000. He paid 10. He is planning to use your cash gifts to pay the bill tonight, because he is bankrupt. Liar! Marcus screamed. I held up the bank statements. He stole $150,000 from our marital assets. He gambled away $60,000 at the Lucky 7 Seconds casino last month. And the rest? He spent it on her. I pointed at Tiffany. Tiffany looked at Marcus. You said you were a millionaire. You said the gambling was a lie Elena made up. It is right here, Tiffany, I said, walking closer, placing the papers on the front table where his mother sat. Martha tried to grab me, but Mr. Henderson stepped in. Touch her, and you go to jail for assault, ma'am. I turned to the crowd, spotting his biggest investor, Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, did you know your investment capital was used to pay off a poker debt? Mr. Sterling stood up, his face red. He looked at Marcus, then at the papers. Is this true? Marcus stammered. It was a bridge loan. Mr. Sterling buttoned his jacket. I'm out. He walked out of the hall. It started a chain reaction. Guests began to whisper, then stand. The humiliation was absolute. Tiffany looked at the man she thought was her golden ticket. You're broke? You're actually broke? She ripped the veil from her head, threw it on the ground, and ran out the side door crying. Marcus stood alone at the altar, a king of nothing. The hotel manager stepped forward with 2 security guards. Mr. Vance, we need to discuss the bill. Now. I turned around and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The aftermath was swift. Marcus was forced to sell the house to pay me my share and settle his debts. He lost the business. The last I heard, he was living in a basement apartment, working as a delivery driver for a pizza chain. His mother, Martha, lost her source of income and ended up in a state-subsidized nursing home, complaining to anyone who would listen about her ungrateful family. Brenda tried to sue me for emotional distress, but Mr. Henderson laughed the case out of court. As for me, I am the manager at Greenleaf Organics now. The work is hard, but it is honest. I have my own apartment, small but cozy, with a sunny window for Jasper. I pay my own bills. I answered to no one. Friends, there is a profound lesson in the ruins of the Vance marriage. We often think that love requires us to make ourselves small, so that others can feel big. We think endurance is a virtue, but true dignity comes from knowing your worth. Never give someone the power to destroy you. Keep your receipts. Know your numbers. And if you ever find yourself at a crossroads where you must choose between saving a relationship and saving yourself, always, always choose yourself. Because the only person you are guaranteed to spend the rest of your life with